Okay, on to the final and the third section, cyberspace and competitions of capital. All I want to do here is I want to try and get us to think critically. Again, thinking of why has cyberspace exploded in such a way and why is it so important to people? Well, if we think of a Bourdieusian analysis, it's all about competitions of capital. Now, I've mentioned this before, but fundamentally, when we talk about cultures of co-created convergence and the shift online, our brands need to have a digital heartbeat online because really that's where the consumers are and how they can engage with them 24/7. What we're noticing is again a shift in identity politics. And the great thing about the online world is that the online worlds allow us to be something other. Remember earlier I said this idea about being distilled. You can distill or you can airbrush a particular version of yourself. So the question is your identity offline the same as your identity online? And that's something that we can pick up, if you like, in the tutorial. However, the key for Bourdieu is, and it'd be the same for any Bourdieusian analysis, cyber worlds are no different from the physical world in the sense is that they are merely spaces where people display their difference and their distinction and fundamentally to perpetuate the capitalist system, which is fundamentally all about domination for Bourdieu. Now remember the last time, what I said is Bourdieu argues that class has definitely not disappeared and it's just become far more subtle, far more stratified, and cyberspace just replicates that process. Because online people want to construct a difference, a distinction and a domination. Now clearly what's interesting is whether we might argue that that's not the case. Bizarrely, brands wouldn't argue that. Brands would accept the fact that they are all about difference and distinction. They need to be distinct from other brands because brands are fundamentally aspirational. And when we talk about domination, clearly brands want to dominate other brands. They want to capture the market. They want to up the competition and be the best. It's as simple as that. So they tie into it quite, to Bourdieu's concept, quite well. However, Bourdieu has a famous formula. It's called Habitus-Field-Capital. Habitus is basically, if you could just think of the environment and the family that you grew up in and your local community, that environment you grew up in, that constitutes your habitus and the significant others that you engage with. Now, in your habitus, you accumulate capital, cultural capital. I'll come to that in a tick. One of the key things, though, when you think about cultural capital, and this is particularly relevant to brands, is the field. Bourdieu argues that capital is only deployed and competed over and accumulated in specific fields. Now, events would be a field. Education would be a field, if you understand me, right? And capital only works within specific fields. Now, a good one, if I think about events, is Coachella. You'll see a picture of it in a minute. Coachella is I suppose, a very luxurious festival. It's highly regarded for the celebrities that attend it. It's very consumerist, and it's openly so. It celebrates that, if you like. So it's quite happy to be young, very consumer friendly. Very aesthetic, and it's all about conspicuous consumption and also about celebrity, right? Now, if you then go to something like Cambridge, which was well back in 1965, I think Cambridge began, Cambridge Folk Fest or Cambridge Festival, which is still going on today, it's very traditional, it's very folky, it's very child friendly. The particular bands that you wouldn't necessarily see them, if you like, at Coachella. So they're totally different demographic, different consumer groups with different aspirations, and therefore, when it comes to branding, obviously the brands would have to tap into that demographic or the profile of those people. So the capital that you could attain, for example, in somewhere like Coachella doesn't necessarily apply to the capital that would be fought over in Cambridge. They would be quite possibly totally different. But we can talk about that, so I'll explain it better in the tutorial. The key thing about cultural capital is it can be broken down. It can be broken down into objective capital, institutional, social, and symbolic. Objective capital is just those things that you can actually own. It's like people saying, oh, look, I've got the ticket stub, I was at Coachella. Oh, look at me, I've got a Ferrari, there, it's sitting outside. Institutional capital is about knowledge, and that's usually knowledge about a particular subject area. Again, if you just think of the brand, Ferrari is a classic brand. So an institutional capital surrounding a brand such as Ferrari would be somebody who is able to tell you everything about its history, everything about the type of upholstery, if you like, the engine, you know, the mechanics of the car. That'd be somebody showing off, if you like, about their knowledge about a particular brand. That's called institutional capital. Social capital, well, that just links into, if you like, basically all those social networks and who you know, the who you knows and the people that you can accumulate, and you can say, well, look, I am connected to, this is my friend, and people have social capital. And I think I said to you before, the great thing is that objective, institutional and social capital can all be accumulated over time, but symbolic capital has to be given. It has to be bestowed upon you by the group that you covet, okay? You have to get it from them. They have to give it to you. You can't earn it. You can't accumulate it. People have to give it to you. They have to say, like, you're the main man, you're the main woman, you're the top dog, you're the great guy. That's exactly what symbolic capital is. So Bourdieu argues, and we look for those in every field. The key thing is that these forms of capital, in the particular field, Bourdieu argues, perpetuate the process of consumer capitalism in a very, very subtle way. And I would argue that brands most certainly inhabit that. You see, the way that we keep consumer capitalism going, especially online, is through this issue of sociability. And the visual nature of what we see online and how that ties up to the visual and the sensory nature that brands appeal to us online. We are now constructing this issue of experiential capital, but a digital mode of capital that we can see online. Fundamentally, what we do is we do it to ourselves. What we do is we perform in the real world, and we digitally distill and digitize our real life, and we load it up online. Now, brands are able to see that, of course, and profile their brand essence with what we are actually exhibiting online. Obviously, remember what it said earlier on, where they can look at, obviously, your age, they can look at your economic status. So we're displaying this online all the time through our real world, if you like, existence, which we then load up online. More importantly, because the consumer is almost omnipresent and they're convergent, they're online and they're integrated or networked across all their networks, then for a brand and for the ability for them to tap into you and to engage you in a very personal and emotional way, and for you then to recommend them, we know recommendation, online recommendation is the biggest, and the most valuable thing that brands can get. Remember what I said a while back when I talked about forgetting the 4 Ps or the 7 Ps of marketing, and how, if you like, because of the online world, we're now talking about the 4 Es, which are this idea of what we need to do is we need to firstly engage people in an emotional and an experiential way. This is our capital. We then need to excite them, so we need to actually really tap into their lifestyle and excite them. We then need to educate them about the brand, if you like. That's even that institutional capital about what brand is and how you want, why you want to purchase it or be involved in it or be loyal to it. And then they become your evangelist, the thing that all brands want, the ability for you to recommend them to all of your network online. And why? Because in the same way as we look for difference and distinction, if you like, in the physical world, we also seek that difference and distinction digitally. That feeds into us, actually feeds into us in a 360 way, where we've actually find now that the real world and the virtual world are really one and the same. So, just as we move to conclusion, what I'd like us to do is to take a wee quick look and a wee quick think about that notion of the real. And I really want to keep this for this tutorial, because fundamentally brands are able, if you like, to create aspirations in our minds. They tap into that desire for difference distinction. They tap into that desire for experiential capital. But most importantly, they're able to tell a story in your mind's eye, and they're able to appeal to you in such a way and marry your own identity with their brand essence. That's the whole idea. And William Gibson, you remember him for the very start. I really like this because he's actually putting here how this issue of how cyberspace is colonising what we used to think of as the real world. Just what I said there, the notion of the real, the physical world and the cyber world that we live is almost indistinguishable. I actually say that notion of the virtual, it's a bad term when we talk about the real world and the virtual. The virtual world, as if virtual is somehow less than or fake. I would challenge that, and it's something we want to speak about in the tutorial. And here's a really good one again by Gibson. Because you see, in the cyberspace, or in the cyberspace world, and in the branded world with the whole notion of the digital heartbeat of brands and brand aspiration and brand essence, and how they're trying to tap into our desire, if you like, for difference and distinction and marry or profile us up to their brand. We actually produce, we are the product, if you like, of cyberspace. This vast hive mind, because every time that we do a post or tweet, or we're on YouTube, or we're actually in gamification, we are actually contributing to this huge data set that profiles us and actually produces, if you like, this hive mind. We're actually contributing to its knowledge. So when some people would say about consumer capitalism, and they might see it in a very negative way, and they might want to resist it, the fact is our very online existence is feeding this whole world unconsciously and I would say quite literally expanding it at an exponential rate, as I say. And that there is producing, if you like, different entities that, if you like, brands are tapping into. But it also questions the whole concept, if you like, of what we now can distinguish, if you like, as the real. So it's quite a philosophical discussion. But I want to hold that, if you like, for the tutorial, where we can actually come back to this stuff and we can discuss it maybe at greater length. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.